Hello, wrestling fans and sports card collectors. This is Tom from CollectAWrestlePalooza. Today I'm counting down the top 5 prices paid for professional wrestling t-shirts. I love this category. What a neat item to collect. There's so much nostalgia with vintage wrestling merchandise, particularly items that have images and logos of the wrestlers. No better canvas for that than a wearable t-shirt. The last time I did this category, I was shocked how much some folks will pay for an old shirt. Has the market risen even more since then? At the end of the video, I will compare the highest price the last time I looked at this category to now. Let's find out together.
CollectAWrestlePalooza. CollectAWrestlePalooza.
But before we get going, let's discuss the criteria for this video. I only include eBay auctions in my top 5 lists. eBay is the biggest platform for selling, and auctions are good indications of the true market prices for sold items. All of these sales are from the last couple months, and they are all pro wrestling tees from any federation or era of the sport. Coming in at number 5 is an amazing ECW t-shirt featuring the tag team, the Eliminators, which sold at auction for $443. This appears to be a legitimate vintage shirt, though you can't really tell with these old ECW shirts because they were probably made in Tommy Dreamer's basement with a silkscreen pulled by Taz himself. You never know, and that actually is true. They actually did make their own merchandise early on there. The thing I love about the Eliminators is their finishing move. They would swipe at the opponent, one would kick their head and the other would pull out their feet at the same time. If you look at the back of this shirt, you can see them performing this maneuver. When I think of them, I imagine when they invaded the WWF, I think the Eliminators came in the ring and did that finishing move to, I forget who, but it was a way of introducing the ECW to the world. So for those reasons, this t-shirt is amazing. Also, just the colors. I love the pink. I love the pink overlay on the blue. It just screams vintage basement ECW glory. ECW Eliminators t-shirt number 5, $443. Now, number 4 was a suspicious sale, but I included it anyway. The reason it was suspicious is it looked like there might have been some shill bidding from an unregistered user, but most of the bids looked legit, so I included it anyway, and also I just love this t-shirt. It's a 1991 WWF Summer Slam Crew shirt, which sold at auction for $480. Just look at this thing. The match made in heaven and the match made in hell. Was that Hulk Hogan versus Sergeant Slaughter when he was a sympathizer to the other side during the war? Oh man, what a brutal time in professional wrestling. You had Macho Man, you had Miss Elizabeth, you had Ultimate Warrior, and you had Hulk Hogan coming at you hot. And this t-shirt is cool because it was actually supposedly what the Crew wore during that event. So I didn't show it here, but on the back of the t-shirt it does say Crew, and this is from 1991, so it was kind of worn, but on the front you can see Madison Square Garden, August 29th, live on pay-per-view, WWF SummerSlam. I also kind of like that they didn't color in the figures themselves. It's kind of that black and white outline cartoony figure, which would be somewhat reminiscent of a Crew shirt, you know? They're all business. They don't need to advertise it any more than they need to just with this black and white picture of all the wrestlers who are going to be there. It just is kind of a little bit toned down from the other SummerSlam type logos and advertisements that are out there. But the shirt itself is still hot pink, just like the summer. I can only imagine how cool this thing looked when it was brand new. So I had to include it. Number 4, $480, the 1991 SummerSlam Crew t-shirt. Coming in at number 3 is an awesome 1995 shirt. Take a look at this. Sycho Sid, which sold at auction for $510. Is it just me, or does this shirt look like Brock Lesnar? And you could kind of say Sycho Sid was the precursor to Brock Lesnar. Sid Vicious was wrestling in the WCW. huge behemoth of a man that Vince McMahon just liked, brought him over to the WWF and had a famous run as Sycho Sid, Sid Justice, and a few other persona in the WWF. The image that sticks out for me is when he had Sid in the middle of the ring and sparklers or fireballs or whatever it was, and they'd play that horror music in the background, and he would come out, and he was just huge. He had all of these muscles upon muscles, covered in sweat, covered in baby oil, chiseled physique with his black leather coat or whatever he was wearing at the time. Sycho Sid was a sight to behold. So this t-shirt really is just an exemplifies what Sycho Sid was all about. The bright red, he was rage. He would come out and just, brutalize the opponents, and then the purple background, and all of that is reminiscent of 1995. So really good looking shirt. That's why it sold for $510, 1995 Sycho Sid. Now, speaking of the mid-90s, number 2, look at this t-shirt. 1996, The Undertaker shirt sold for an amazing $1,175. Can you believe it? That is such a high price to pay for an old t-shirt. The listing said this one is rare. It does have the eyes rolled back, and it also looks to be in really good condition, meaning that looks like a photograph of The Undertaker on the front, and you can see RIP written all over the design in the background and all over the t-shirt. The Undertaker in that amazing mid-90s font. He's kind of transforming away from being the dead man into the next phase of the Ministry of Darkness, all his different character changes. At this point, he did roll his eyes back in his head very often in the ring, which was really scary looking. He'd be snarling, and it looked like he was grabbing powers from beyond to help to defeat his opponent. So rest in peace. Amazing, amazing t-shirt. But what a price, $1,175 for a professional wrestling tee, 1996, The Undertaker. And finally, coming in at number 1, the Nature Boy, Ric Flair, a 1985 shirt, which sold for $1,402. Stylin' and profilin'. This shirt is mid-80s at its finest. Look at all the fluorescence, the pink robe, the yellow hair, all the spotlights in the background as he's walking down the runway or the platform or whatever you'd call it to get to the ring. I think one of the reasons this one sold for $1,402 is because of its age and because it's authentic, and I'm imagining it's quite rare. The copyright does say Jim Crockett Promotions, which is pretty cool, because I don't think that they made as many t-shirts as the WWF. That was really a merchandise company and continues to be a merchandise company to this day. I think that NWA and WCW was more about the product of wrestling, more about the content, more about the events, and that type of thing to generate revenue, whereas WWF was more of a media company and a merchandise company. So I can imagine they did not make as many of these t-shirts. If you do know more about that, please leave some comments, but I can guess that this is a very rare shirt. It's not a great looking shirt in my opinion, except that it looks like mid-80s, but you can't even see Ric Flair's face. It's his back, which I guess that's kind of cool. I can imagine the da-na, music playing and him turning around and bum, 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 bum. It does kind of look like that, so that's pretty cool. And that blue is also a really nice color for a mid-80s t-shirt with the pink and the yellow. So aesthetically, like I said, it doesn't show him, in the way that I remember Ric Flair of, the shouting or slapping or his face or anything like that. It doesn't say the Nature Boy, but still a really, really cool shirt just the same. And that's why it sold for $1,402. So as promised, now let's look at number 1 from the last time I ran the top 5 on this category, which was the beginning of this year, February, March of 2024. At that time, the number 1 t-shirt was a 1990 Texas Tornado Kerry Von Erich shirt, which sold for $830. So this time through, almost twice as much, $1,400 for a t-shirt, and also the number 2 shirt this time was sold for even more than the number 1 shirt last time. So I think we can definitively say the market has risen in this category. And that does it for this week. Thank you so much for all the support. If you want to support this channel, you can check out some links in the video notes, a Patreon, an eBay shop. You can also check out CollectAWrestlePalooza.com for all the links. Stay good to each other. We'll see you again soon.
CollectAWrestlePalooza. CollectAWrestlePalooza.